I want winners. I want people that want to win.
All right, we are back after, wow, a pretty easy. There was really not a point in this game, I guess, after the kickoff, maybe the kickoff, where I was like, huh, they're not going to win. Like, it was a very easy game for these guys. And a lot of that is, the defense, of course, which has been just phenomenal for all but one or two games all year. And I guess just the confidence that this young 7th round Mr. Irrelevant quarterback has, because like you and I have been watching this team, since we were younger, but like these last few years, even when they were good, there was always this sense of, Jimmy at any point could just throw the ball to the other team for whatever reason. And not that a rookie quarterback should give you more confidence than someone who is as veteran and as good as Jimmy has been. But I don't know. There's something about this kid that just instills confidence when he's back there. And some of it was a little Brett Favre-ish to me, where I was like, okay, like I get it. Like, but we don't have to show off here. But man, just overall, like what a performance on both sides of the football. What was when did you sort of figure out that the Niners had this thing wrapped up?
Well, he blew that first protection where he missed that free rusher was his responsibility and he didn't pick it up. So those are the things I was kind of expecting to see. So that was a little unsettling at the start. But other than that, the thing that overall, even last week, the thing that impressed me about him is he doesn't rattle. I mean, he is cool. I mean, at all time, even when, he makes a mistake, he doesn't seem like he's fazed by it. And the whole thing, none of it seems like it's too big for him. So that to me is the most impressive thing, because if he can handle that part of it, handling his emotions and handle, the things that are being thrown at him and asked of him, I have complete faith that Kyle can give him enough of the right answers for him to be successful. And that's what we saw today. I mean, I love his mobility. I love the fact that we can move the pocket. I love the fact that when things break down, he makes plays off script. That, more than anything, is what I believe has been missing with Jimmy. Is, he knows how to make the right play, but he's not going to give you anything in terms of moving. So A+ for the young man, I think.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
It was an awesome performance, and I feel like we're in good hands. I just feel like we're in good hands.
Okay, before we go to our 3 points or our three main topics that we talk about to sort of flesh out our overall conversation about the game, I just want to mention to folks, we do have this feed, BSPN for podcasting. We're also on video right now on YouTube and Facebook. But for the podcast, for the audio only folks, if you subscribe, we appreciate you. And if you could throw us a 5-star review on Apple or on Spotify or wherever you are, I think most of these apps take reviews. It is so beneficial to us, especially as we build this network. And I know I'm kind of on all the shows at this point. That's not necessarily where I want it to be, but just kind of how we're starting this. how we're starting this is, it's still very, very new. We got the Warrior Show with me and my son Brian. We have this show. We have the Giant Show with me and my buddy Brad, and we're actually going to have the San Jose State football announcer on the show this week on the Giant Show, because he also does Giant stuff, San Jose Giants. So he's going to come on, and we'll rep San Jose State a little bit because they're actually in a bowl game this year. But yeah, there's going to be more content. We have the red and gold standard every once and again. It's really up to Zach to shoot me over his audio. Their audio, their recording schedule's a little bit hit or miss in some cases, but just giving us that 5 stars and writing a little review is so beneficial. And maybe if we can get a few of those, we'll even read them on air. I know some shows that do that, and that seems to get some nice play. So, okay, wanted to get that out of the way. Let's talk about the first, I guess, the first most noteworthy thing here, which is Deebo goes down with an ankle injury in the second quarter. Niners were up, I believe they were up 14-0, or maybe even been 21-0 at this point. But he's runs. He's on a run, and basically as he's getting tackled, his ankle is fallen on top of it, and it bends in a weird way. And he tried to tough it out. He tried to get up. He couldn't get up. They had to bring out the cart for him. And the latest on that is Kyle says he believes it is more than probable that it is a high ankle sprain, which is a 6-week on the low end, on the early end injury. And in all, sometimes we see 8 weeks as well on the later end. So the playoffs start in like 5 weeks. If the Niners were able to get to the number 2 spot, and we'll talk about that in near the end of the show, that would give them a little bit of time to get somebody like Deebo back. But in this game, we've had, if you count Trey from the first game of the season, second game of the season, if you count Kinlaw, who hasn't been back yet, Jimmy last week, Deebo this week, like these are big time injuries. And the only thing that, it just shows how much depth that the 49ers have. And, kudos to Shanahan and Lynch for putting together a unit where you're using every single guy on this roster and it's next man up. But man, you just kind of wonder, like, when is this going to end, especially with someone like Deebo? And look, this is why Deebo held out, right? Like, he knows football. He knows that, football is a dangerous sport, and he wanted to get his money because of his usage. And not that he could foresee getting hurt like this, but him going down, who knows? He's a big dude, and knees or ankles, ligaments, they could, for someone who is such a big guy, they could go the other way for him, and it could hurt his it could hurt his future because of speed is such a big part of his game as well. So thoughts quickly on the Deebo thing, and also we'll talk later at the end about kind of who steps up in his spot. But I know there's a certain Hall of Fame wide receiver that kind of spouted off about this injury. But quick thoughts on the play and on how it happened, and just, I guess, the injury situation with the Niners in general.
Well, like you said, that it's a prime example of why Deebo wanted to get his money, because the way he plays and as aggressive as he is, teams have to come. They got to come at him, with both barrels, because if not, you'll get embarrassed. He will, run around you, through you, if you guys aren't coming fully loaded. So subsequently, that's how teams are going to attack him. So it leaves him open for these kind of injuries. It looked to me like a knee at first, because he kind of got bent up underneath the pile, kind of weird. So at first I was like, well, the ankle is a good thing, relatively, but that high ankle is a rough one. So if that is what it is, and again, kind of like with Jimmy, I think we need to, at this point, just kind of wait for everything to come, because at first, Jimmy, it was a fracture and Jimmy was done. Now, and that changed, by Wednesday. So hopefully, let's remain optimistic, and hopefully it's an optimistic report on Deebo. But, you know, like you say, kudos to them in the way that they have put this team together, because as we were rolling earlier, it seemed like George was featured heavily in the game plan. And then you obviously CMC was, but then you also got Ayuk, and you've got Jennings, and you've got guys like Gray and McLeod who haven't really been unlocked yet this season. So obviously we don't have another Deebo stashed somewhere, but I think that, we can make do. I think, again, I trust Kyle to be able to cobble together game scripts that will utilize the talent that we have on the roster. And I think that, obviously Deebo is a huge loss, just like all of those other guys have been. Trey was a huge loss. Jimmy was a huge loss.
Yeah.
So I at this point, I have faith in Kyle to be able to cobble something together, and leaning on our defense, I think we can, we can muddle through. I think we are still in prime position. When I look at all the other teams around the NFC, I think even still, injuries included, we match up really well against everybody. Our style of play matches, our style of play travels. So
Yeah.
I think we're going to be fine.
There was another injury coming out that Kyle mentioned in his press conference. I guess Purdy has an oblique thing that it didn't stop him from playing, but Kyle said, after the adrenaline wears off, we'll sort of see where he's at tomorrow, because obliques can be tricky. And if Purdy is out,
Wow.
it's going to be good old JJ there, who and look, JJ is what you would call a journeyman, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a journeyman. He understands the way that the 49ers system works because he's been with Kyle before. That's why he was the guy who was brought in for that reason. But to go from Jimmy to Brock Purdy, it doesn't look like it has been a detriment in any way. Maybe even been, at least for today, it was an improvement, just the way that Brock played versus the way that Jimmy plays. But to go then from that to Johnson, I can't imagine that the Niners would just skip not skip a beat with him. So that is something to keep an eye on, especially because we play again on Thursday. So this is not something where, they can wait all the way until Sunday. It's really, they probably have to figure out, because they're not going to practice tomorrow. So they'll practice Tuesday, Wednesday, and then travel Thursday or travel Wednesday night, or however it works.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to have to make a decision probably by Tuesday on what the game plan is. So I'm sure we'll hear more about that. Cross your fingers that the kid is okay. And, he's young, so his body's going to heal a little bit faster than everybody else's.
And if I what I could tell about him already is that if he can go, he's gonna go. It'll take wild horses to keep that kid on the sideline, I believe.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about one Brock Purdy, because the marquee said it was Brock against Brady, but really this was about the 49ers defense overwhelming the Bucs offense. And in doing that, Brock Purdy was able to make plays. I will say there were a couple throws that because he doesn't have a weak arm, but his arm doesn't light you on fire in any way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a direct, straight throw. There's no flutter in it. It's and sometimes he throws it up there, and like there was a pass to Ayuk. I think it was maybe his only catch of the day, where he threw it, and I immediately thought, oh no, I don't know if he has enough juice on this ball, but he clearly did. And then Ayuk was able to get some run after the catch because he made a great move. There was one play that thankfully got called back, where it was an interception right before the half. But those are really the only. And you mentioned the one in the beginning of the game where the blitzer just came right in front of him and he didn't see him. But other than those, other than those two plays, he was pretty much on it, and especially being able to move out of the pocket, being able to create time. I was joking that, this offensive line, they're like, what? We got to block for more than 2.5 seconds? Come on, because he's going to get out of the pocket and he's going to move and he's going to try and create something that isn't there. And you saw what the opposite is because this is how Jimmy and Brady, I'm not comparing them as players, but their style of play is very similar. The only way that they create time in the pocket is to move up in the pocket and kind of create some time there. Whereas you saw Brock, he's dropping back, he's spin moving, he's rolling out, he's going against the grain, and he's got that he's got a little bit of he's got some speed in those legs, and he's really savvy with where the rush was coming. But the flip side is the way that Brady played with the Niners had 0 sacks, but it felt like he was pressured throughout the game.
Under siege is how it felt to me.
Right. And he was making throws early, whereas if he had a half of a second more, he's probably making a much better throw. And so you can see what Purdy does. Now there will be moments in his style of play where he's going to be a little bit too aggressive on that and maybe make some reckless plays. There was one where he rolled out and he was able to get rid of it, threw it out of bounds. But that one could have been, something that was a negative play. There was another one where Greg Olson, the color commentator, was joking that, as he's running away from defenders, he's not really protecting the football. And so those are things that they'll have to sort of like tie up a loose end for. But man, I don't think you can't really complain about the way the guy played. He was confident. He made strong, aggressive throws. When's the last time we saw 2 plays in the same game that were long touchdown passes, right? Like we had the one he had the one to CMC that, that they had to figure out if it was in or out or whatever. But man, just 2 long plays already. Just really, really fun to see him. And it was kind of one of those things where you were kind of like, is this real? Like, are we, what we are watching, is this real, or is this kind of like a flash in the pan? And so that's what the rest of these games are for. But for this day, he was 100% real.
For sure. I mean, and it's okay. You hear it and you see it on, because that's what social media is. But it's a poor man's what I was hoping it would be with Trey. You see off script plays, you see movement and mobility out of the pocket. You see him challenging the defense downfield. I mean, those are the things that I was hopeful, that Trey brings to the table. Is Brock Purdy Trey? No, he isn't. Is Brock Purdy a quarterback 1? No, he isn't. He is Davis Mills, Taylor Heineke light. If you've got that guy as your quarterback 1, you're looking for a Trey Lance. But what he can totally be is Colt McCoy. If he's your QB2, you're good. He can come in, he can win you some games, he can do some good stuff for you. But let's not try to make this dude something he's not. He's not a 9-figure face of the franchise quarterback. Stop. But he can win you some games, and hopefully what we're in the witnessing is what I'm hoping is his Linsanity moment. I hope he's able to catch lightning in the bottle for 6 to 8 weeks and end up with his jersey in the Hall of Fame with a really cool story about for how 8 weeks he caught that lightning in the bottle and he won a Super Bowl. That's what I'm hoping for.
Okay, now I'm not going to argue with you about this, But what I will say is this could be his. I'm not saying he's going to be Kurt Warner, because I think Kurt Warner with those good Rams teams, it was like, okay, if we're just throwing, I'm going to be able to put the ball. It was, a lot of it was him. A lot of it was just those weapons. And then when he moved out of that Ram system, he still had a good career. He still had years where he took Arizona. And I think did he also end up on the Giants? But
he struggled with the Giants. But
basically, what I'm saying is the fit with Purdy and what the 49ers do might make sense. Whereas him on another team, you put any quarterback with a team that doesn't have any weapons and they're not going to do well. I mean, look at someone like even Aaron Rodgers, as great as Aaron Rodgers is. Look at Brady, as great as Brady is. For whatever reason, he is not connecting with Evans and Godwin like he was last year and the year before. But Purdy, he may be such a good fit with this team, where on this team, he might be real. And then on another team, when he makes his money, and this is what it is really, is like, oh, he can play. He's not, he's playing for this team right now, but his future is more than likely on whenever his contract is up and he can actually go show his demo reel to another team, right? And we've seen those moments in the past with, we mentioned Nick Foles already, right? Like when he won the Super Bowl and then he's got to go and get signed, and then now he's third string in Carolina or whatever it is. But my point is that Brock may not be the guy that Shanahan says, okay, he is our future, but in this system, he may be a really good player. And I think that is sort of to be determined in the playoffs in this thing. He could be someone as good of a fit as Kurt Warner was with the Rams, just because of the weapons that he has.
I totally, I agree that he has shown me enough already that he's a player in this league. Where he is on the hierarchy is what I question, because I'm a tools guy. You go back to the tools. I've seen him on the field. I've watched him do his thing. To me, he just doesn't have the tools of a quarterback one. Whereas Kurt Warner, he was, a big guy with good tools, very accurate, could put it on people. And then, like you say, once you put him in a system where he's got a ton of weapons, he can do his thing. I just believe, from my years of experience watching the NFL, if a dude like Brock Purdy or Taylor Heineke is your quarterback, you're always looking at the door for the next guy. Nobody's ever, no GM or coach is gonna put their faith in that guy as the dude. I don't believe, but we'll see. Maybe.
Who does he remind you of, who you've seen in the past? And some of this is like, oh, great in college, and then when they came to the pros, maybe not as great. There's one person in the back of my mind who he reminds me of, but I feel like if that's his ceiling, then it's not going to be great.
To me, when I look at that dude, I think he's like a poor man's Chad Pennington.
Interesting.
Chad was a really, really good athlete. He was a basketball player, so he legit was an athlete. So I don't think he's a better athlete than Jimmy, and he is like an above average athlete for a quarterback. But like somebody like Chad Pennington was like a legit athlete, like kind of like Tannehill is like a legit athlete.
Yeah.
He's not just a good athlete for a quarterback. He's going to be one of your best athletes on the team. He's not like a DB athlete, but he is a legit athlete that can make plays. I don't think that Brock is that, but the proof is in the pudding. He can get out there and he can make a play. That touchdown run was legit. He saw it and he went and got it. And that is what we need in this. Sorry, my dog is sneaking up on me. Yeah, I think when I look back and look at it from like a 10,000 mile view, which we're in it right now and it's hard to do, I am really, as a 49er fan, I am kind of happy with what our quarterback room looks like moving forward. I think with him and Trey, I think that's a really good mix, because again, I've seen that dude up close and personal, and again, I haven't seen anything even on his tape when he's played. Throughout those first two games, in my opinion, because I've looked at, when you go, online, we get into these arguments about, and everybody wants to bring up like Patrick Mahomes, which is one hell of an anomaly. How many in the 100 years of starting quarterbacks, how many dudes have won an MVP in their second season? Like 3 or 4. So to me, what I'm going to compare Trey to is the other thousands of guys who, in the 100 years of playing quarterback, what they've done in their first 4 games. I'm not comparing them to Patrick Mahomes, so let's not do that. So I still think there's a lot there. And I know some people are like bust on this guy already, which I think is ridiculous. But again, we'll see. What we know is it's going to play out. We're going to see what happens the first week of OTAs. We're going to see what happens the first week of training camp.
Which, Trey's definitely coming into camp as one. But if Shanahan wanted to create a little bit of competition, he could.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
he probably should.
And Brock will definitely be right there. Here's my comparison. Here's a person who he reminds me of, and this probably ages me a little bit, but Ty Detmer. When Ty Detmer was in college, that dude was just moving chains and throwing touchdowns, and his game, he was okay in the NFL, but his game didn't really transition into what the NFL needed. There's another guy now. Nobody is as fast as this guy, but you remember when Andre Ware was in Houston and he was doing the run and shoot. That's a little bit of a different style, but he also was like, he just moved the ball. He's throwing for like 5,000 yards, throwing for 500 yards a game. And that's kind of like what Brock was in college too, doing it at a smaller school and not the, not winning conference championships or anything. But like, you have those guys who their job in college is really like the whole offense is built around their ability to throw on first, second, and third down. And so he's able to come in, and because he's got so many reps being a 4-year player in college. And that's what Trey is really missing, is just the reps. He just didn't have the reps in college, dealing with the COVID thing and then taking the year off. Like, he just doesn't have the reps that someone like Brock has. So that's why, at least I think why, when it comes to their decision making, Brock is a little bit more like assertive, where Trey is kind of like he's kind of waiting a little bit more. But but it's all about reps.
That Ty Detmer comparison is really good, because Ty Detmer, I don't know if he didn't win it. I know he went to New York for the Heisman. I mean, so he was a legit player. And I think both of those comparisons that you made, like a Ware or a Detmer, those were guys that, in their cases, they were, 25 years too early. Those are both guys who would really flourish in this version of the NFL in a way that, they didn't. The league just wasn't set up for those guys to be as successful as they could be now. But that's legit. And the thing that you mentioned about that's the the dichotomy of it is like somebody like you said, you're 100% right. Brock benefited from all those reps he got in college, and that's something that Trey doesn't get. But Trey doesn't get those reps because guys as talented as Trey don't stick around for 4 years because they are top 5 picks. Brock Purdy sticks around for 4 years because he's the last pick in the draft. Just the way the system works,
right?
His skill set, ain't nobody out here checking for that at the top of the draft, so he might as well stay and get as much experience as he can, because guys like Parcells back in the day, that was a big thing for him, is dudes who had 40 or more starts. That was like one of the top things in his checklist. But the fact of the matter is that was why that his like checklist was, obsolete, because nobody who is anybody, you look at somebody like in this year's draft cycle, somebody like Anthony Richardson, who's probably going to be taken in the top of the first round, who is raw as hell, but there's no way he's ever going to get 40 starts. I mean, he's just too good. He's just too good. Guys with the skill, with the toolbox that the NFL is looking for, are never going to stick around for 40 starts. It doesn't make any monetary sense for them to.
Just shows you when I was watching the most college football. Andre Ware won the Heisman in '89. Ty Detmer won it in '90. So that's like late '80s, early '90s is really like my big college football viewing time. I don't watch it too much anymore. But so I was always gonna pull someone from that era.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay, so let's go back to this Deebo scenario, which is who's going to step up in his absence. The one thing that we talked about, and this has kind of been a theme since they did trade for Christian, which is you have so many weapons, and yet you see George Kittle with like 4 catches for 30 yards. You see Deebo doing most of his yardage on the ground. You see Ayuk. I said Ayuk only had 1 catch. He had 2 catches. I completely forgot about the touchdown. And so because of that, I think it comes from a Kittle. Maybe it's not a Juwan Jennings, because I think his sort of what he does as their third down receiver is absolutely perfect. But I like, you look at who they have, and Danny Gray got his first catch today. That was really cool for him to see that. They got Ray, who they're, maybe they get creative with him, throwing short screens or something, giving him opportunities. But you can't really replace what Deebo does. So where do you think the balls that would generally go to Deebo, or even the carries that would go to Deebo, do we get an increase in CMC? Does Jordan Mason pick up some of that slack? Is it where Kittle's kind of shows out a little bit and all of a sudden he's becoming more of a priority? Like, where do you see, who do you see coming in and really taking up what Deebo is leaving?
Well, actually, I kind of think it is like a committee type thing. I think because Deebo does so much for us, I think that what you end up seeing is Jordan Mason gets more of those rushes. I think you see Ray and Danny Gray kind of getting more of those jet sweep and like kind of outside run opportunities. And I think Ayuk and Jennings get more of those targets. I think it does end up becoming kind of a committee, which is what you have to do, because there's no one guy who can really replace all that Deebo gives you in one package. But I think we've got guys who, if you parcel out his responsibilities, can step up. And the the bandwidth is there for them to do so, because I can't imagine somebody like Ayuk. I mean, he's a team guy, so I don't think anybody's in there complaining about the touches they're getting, but I'm sure he would relish having more on his plate. I'm sure Kittle would like more targets, but I mean, he's just, you know, he's like such a linchpin to everything else that we do.
Yep.
In terms of shoring up over there on the right side for Mac in pass blocking. Being, that play that they ran today where Kittle was the second guy through on the run, and CMC it was his block that kind of opened everything up. He does so much for us in other places that his contribution in the pass game suffers. But so I mean, he could get more targets. I just think that the way this roster has been put together, there are so many other places where you can go to kind of offload Deebo's workload that in the short run, I think we can be okay in a condensed time frame. Obviously, we need Deebo back.
All right, Shelvin, our guy Shelvin, he's always thinking. He's always feeding us stuff here. He said, does that make Odell Beckham Jr. a possibility now?
Well, I would say absolutely, but I think the hang up with the reason he got out of Dallas was the question was when he would be able to give you anything. Because I mean, I saw him on the barbershop type thing, and it sounds like he's not really interested in even playing in the regular season. He's kind of got his eyes focused towards the playoffs. I don't know if that is because he is physically unable to give you anything in the next 4 or 5. I have no idea what that is. And that's what we need him for. It was said kind of early on in the whole process is that his team is kind of looking for 2 or 3 years. I don't think we would be in the business we'd be interested in being in the business, in the OBJ business long term. I think he would be a great rental for us, but again, that would even depend on how soon we could get him up and online for us. I don't know if this a playoff rental works for us. I think we would need to get him on board and get him integrated sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we're looking for something like their agreement with Jimmy, which is, okay, like you want to test the free agent market next year because it wasn't great for you this year. We're going to give you the platform to really show out and do that. And that's kind of what you're looking for in this scenario with Beckham, which is we're going to give, we need you to come in. We want to win a championship, and you can use this as a way to show teams going into next year's free agency that you're ready. And rightfully so, his agent is looking for like a 2 or 3 year thing now.
Mm-hmm.
And they may eventually have to back off of that stance because I think he visited a few teams and nobody seemed to be willing to give him that. And if he is willing to back off of that, then it just sort of becomes, okay, where can I fit in the best and maximize this time? And whether or not that's, I don't know if that would be the 49ers or not, but they do have an opening right now that may look good for him. But like you said, if he's not ready, which I think that was possibly the worry, because these teams are, the 49ers just improved to 9-4, which means there's only 4 games left. And to bring somebody in and to have him sort of learn the aspects of the offense that he will need to learn. Now, I'm sure a lot of the stuff that he did with the Rams is probably not that different from what the 49ers do, but still, like, he's got to kind of come in and get his feet wet and get comfortable with the QB and all that stuff. By the time if he was to play next week, he may not even be like fully in rhythm and understanding of everything until the playoffs start then. So you can't come in playoff game number 1 because you're not going to be acclimated to the team at that point soon enough.
So, I mean, he has a foundation in the Stefanski offense, and then also with McVay. So I think he could be a fit that way, but I know it's a different position. But what I foresee is kind of like what Von Miller was for the Rams last year. You come in, you show your worth, you win a title, and then you go get paid. I mean, again, we're paying Nick. We've got Ayuk is gonna be in line to get paid. We've got Deebo. I mean, I think we're set long term at receiver, so I don't think he's a fit here long term. But I definitely think we could find. I'm sure Kyle could find a way to use him for the next 8 weeks if he's able to do that. But that whole nonsense about just trying to get his body right for the next 4 weeks and then showing up week 1 of the playoffs. I mean, that's just nonsense to me.
Yeah. That would be tough. I would like to see. Okay, so I do not want to put the cart before the horse here because the 49ers still have to win their division, and they can do so by beating the Seahawks, which is next Thursday week. Again, which we're talking about Thursday, which is only in 5 days. I would like to see if Danny Gray can be helpful at all, right? I'm sure that's what Shanahan would like to see too. Can he help in any way? Can Ray help in any way in some of these scenarios where maybe they try and be creative with him? They did at the end of the game today. They gave him a couple shots because he's fast for sure. He's fast. And I was talking to somebody in our group, in our Facebook group. Shout out to the Facebook group. That was pretty fun today. And the question was about Jordan Mason. Like, we need to see more Jordan Mason. And I agree. Like, I'd love to see him sprinkled in a little bit more, just to kind of also save CMC's legs a little bit. But the reason why Jordan Mason works so well in the second half is because he's got fresh legs. That Buccaneers defense was depressed from getting their ass kicked the whole game. So it's like perfect.
Vita Vea not being there was a big deal.
Yeah. So those aspects where you bring in some fresh legs and you could take advantage of certain scenarios, that they can see all the different defenses that come in. Someone gets replaced and you're like, oh, let's pick on that guy. And you can bring in guys like that. So I'm gonna, I would love to see, and I'm sure Shanahan is thinking of those kind of opportunities as well. And hey, maybe JJ will get a few more shots than normal because he is they don't sometimes, especially with Kittle, they don't necessarily need 3 wide receivers on the field at all times, right? So there's opportunity there for guys to step up, and Shanahan seems to be able to put guys in really, really good opportunities, and hopefully they can take advantage of that.
Yeah, for sure. This is going to be a real interesting week because if we, when you, if we could clinch next week, I mean, I don't like to get too far ahead of myself, but if we can clinch next week, and then with that Viking loss today, I think you had mentioned it earlier, and maybe we'll get there, but I don't know if the second seed is completely out of reach, which ends up being interesting in terms of what we're doing with being experimental. Or are we out here really, we'll have the division in our back pocket, so we know we're in, but now are we out here trying to get that second seed, or are we trying to rest dudes, or are we trying to, are we going into experimental mode, trying to see what we've got with Gray and Mason? And so it's going to be interesting to see. I think next week is going to tell us a lot in terms of, where we're at.
So, yeah, let's look at it now. which is okay. So 49ers, they play the Seahawks on Thursday. Seahawks lost today to Carolina, interestingly enough. Then we have 9 days off or whatever before the next game, and that's against Washington. Washington is no gimme. Washington is playing some pretty good football. So they have Washington at home, and that's on Christmas Eve, and then they go to Vegas on New Year's Day. Gosh, that stadium's going to be insane. There's going to be some arrests there. I just know it. And then they finish off against Arizona. So you would think out of all of those teams, Seahawks or the Commanders are probably the best team who, but they're all sort of right in the same spot. The Raiders and the Cardinals are both sort of disappointments, I would say, this year. And so what about Dallas? Dallas finishes off the season. They have the Jags this weekend. And then they're
frisky.
The Jags are frisky. The Cowboys still have the Eagles. That game is in Dallas. It's on Christmas Eve. Now the Eagles, by I don't think they would have the division wrapped up quite yet because they're only 2 games ahead of Dallas. So that is, they're still going to have to win that football game. And if Dallas can win that football game, then they get even closer to the division. So I think that's going to be a really competitive football game. And then after that, it's Titans and Commanders to close out the season for Dallas. So that second spot in the East, it is up for grabs, right? It's there for the taking, but the Niners are probably going to have to win out. And then you get to the end of the season where, oh wait, you know what? I'm off. It's because the Cowboys are the wild card. They're the 4th team. It's the Vikings that the Niners are facing for the 2nd seed. I got mixed up because I was listening to Simmons's podcast, and they were talking about how the Eagles and the Niners and the Cowboys are like the top 3 teams, and how the Vikings are pretenders. So I forgot that this is a division thing. Okay, let's back up. Let's pretend let's rewind the tape and let's forget that I just talked for 2 minutes. The Vikings, a little bit easier for them.
There we go. Okay.
Colts this weekend. Colts come into town. Then the Giants come into town, and the Giants got whooped today by the Eagles. Yeah. Then they go into Green Bay, and then they finish off with the Bears. So not too hard. However, do you all know that the Vikings have 312 points, and they've given up 313 points. So they are very much a pretender in my eyes. And so, they lost today to the Detroit Lions. So there's no, they could lose any one of these games. And but then I still think the Niners are going to have to win out in order to
definitely. If we win out, I'm looking at it right now. We've definitely got them. I'm not sure exactly how it breaks down, but if we win out and they lose just one more game, if they lose just one more and if we both finish with 4 losses, they've got one more loss in conference than we do. We're 7-2 and they're 6-3. And then the point differential is bananas. So all we got to do is handle our business and then hope for them to just stub their toe once and we can catch them. So, it's going to be incumbent upon us to, first and foremost, do what we're supposed to do, which, we aren't so far removed from the beginning of the season to remember that there have been times this year where we have not done that. So that needs to, like Warner was saying in the post-game huddle, is this, we just need to keep going 1-0 and just keep handling our business. And if we do that, again, like I've said before, even with all the setbacks and injuries that we've had. When I look at these teams that are ahead of us, I respect the Eagles and what they're doing, but they can be had even with the addition that they've made with Joseph and Sue in the middle of their defense. We can get them. We can run. You can run the ball on them, and I like how our defense matches up with their offense. So that would be interesting. Dallas, we've got history with them, so
Yep.
I'm not worried.
That the worst case scenario for Cowboys fans is to play the 49ers because they just do not believe in Dak. I misspoke again. In the beginning of the show, I said, to get to the second seed and maybe you get some space. I forgot about this new playoff scenario. Only the first seed gets a bye, right, and it's 2 through 7 playing the first round of the playoffs no matter what. So the more than likely they're not going to catch the Eagles. But what it does make sure is that they have they're the home team in those big games. So that
for
that
sure.
Is what is important.
So like what Justin is saying is not it wouldn't be like you need to like be pressing hard to get to 2. The difference between 2 and 3 is not, it's not something that you need to really bust your ass to be trying to get. It's nice, but it's not a death sentence not to have it. Because you're definitely going to get that one home game, and if it comes to it, and the Eagles make it through, they're going to be, the NFC Championship game is going to be a road game regardless. So,
yep. All right, let's talk about the player of the game. I think that there are 3 really good possibilities depending on how you're feeling. But I'll let you go first because I think you had sort of etched yours in stone by the third quarter. And, and so I'll let you go first.
And it's always interested in me, and then I feel like an ass when I get here, and you've got 3, and I've got like 2 because I think I get tunnel vision, and so I think my honorable mention is CMC.
Okay,
he was great.
He was my third. Yeah, he was definitely my third.
So yeah, I'm gonna be interested to hear who your second is, and it's Brock. 100%. My player of the game is Brock. That dude is. He's my hero now. So it's Brock. Like you had said, like you had mentioned, we are of one accord on the jersey deal. I'm not wearing no jersey.
We're not wearing jerseys of athletes who are younger than us.
Nah,
that's just not
that's just not happening.
That's for my kid to wear.
Yeah, but I would definitely buy my nephew a Brock Purdy jersey.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, he was the guy, and you can just tell the way the team is like, I love it when dudes are getting hype, when a player and their success, kind of galvanizes the team and the team rallies around them, and you're definitely kind of experiencing that with Brock. And it's been my experience in team sports that's when special things happen, and you definitely see that happening with Brock. So he's my guy.
Okay, so here is. By the way, I may or may not have been looking for Brock Purdy rookie cards on eBay this morning. Okay, here's my number 1, and I'm going to give you some numbers here. This person had 15 total tackles today, 10 solo. He had 1 pass defense, and he had an interception. Dre Greenlaw was hitting people in a way that I noticed later in this game. Big dudes like Leonard Fournette were catching the ball and kind of looking over their shoulder because they're just like, we're getting beat and this hurts. And Dre Greenlaw, even more than Fred Warner, the aspect of his game is hitting and sticking guys and really making that a part of his tackling. I just thought he was pretty fantastic. He is having a much better season than I think any of us realized. Like, everyone knew how great Warner was, and he's getting his due now. But everyone's sort of overshadowed on the defensive side by Nick Bosa. Bosa, by the way, should have had a sack today, but they let Brady get away with throwing it out of bounds, even though it looked like he was down. But he would that would have been a sack for Nick. But otherwise, like they didn't get any sacks. I just we kind of make fun of Dre Greenlaw because he's almost over aggressive sometimes, and it could hurt the team. Like you saw how it hurt Tampa today. These late hits and drilling people when you're not really trying to hit people in the helmet in any way, but it's so hard with the way the rules are. And I thought since the last time that he got in trouble, that was earlier in the season, it might have been the Chicago game or whatever. I think he's really he's made sure that whatever we would call it, aggressiveness, or in some cases recklessness, that has not been a part of his game of late, but he's still coming hard and he's still hitting these guys. And I just noticed in this game, these Tampa Bay players that Brady threw 55 times today, these receivers were like making some business decisions, man. They were not going to be fighting for those extra yards because they were getting punished. And so I think he sets the tone. Warner played well. Warner got beat on like one play I saw where Brady threw it over the top of him. But yeah, Dre is my guy. And I would have went Purdy number 2. It was like either or, but Brock didn't really have to do anything in the second half. So
yeah, I'm not mad at it. Not mad at it.
And then CMC was 3 for me.
Yeah, he is for sure a tone setter. And I know some people don't like the business aspect of football, but I wonder if him and his reps are kicking themselves for signing that 2-year extension because he is balling out. And I think, the 49ers to have him locked up for 2 more years now, I think that's a coup. Because Olsen mentioned during the broadcast, and, I cannot disagree that he is every bit the player that Fred Warner is. He's a very good player.
I mean, he probably doesn't have the coverage skills, but it's a different responsibility as
well. So I'll say that, like you say, and they are different players who bring different things to the table. But I think he is. I'll say it like this: he is every bit as impactful with what he brings to the table as Fred is with what he brings. He is definitely a tone setter and one of our best players. So I'm glad that he's going to be here for a while.
Okay, Shelvin had the same 3, just in a different order. Shelvin also said that he got his interception ball signed by Brady after the game.
Oh, word?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It wasn't a good homecoming for Tom. They talked about the 100 tickets that he had to get. He was taking pictures inside the locker room, and I had a buddy who he sent me a note, and he's like, "Oh, this is Brady's job interview for you guys next year." And I was like, "No, it's not going to happen. It's just he if this was the 5 years ago Tom Brady, 100%, but he can get he is not the pass rush is his worst enemy at this point in his career because he doesn't want to get hit. So he's getting rid of the ball way early in some cases. And I imagine some of these receivers, are probably a little frustrated at that. There were a couple plays there to be made, and he just did not want to take that hit. And I don't blame him. Like, I'm a year older than him. I wouldn't take that hit either. But I'm also not doing TB12.
Even prime Tom Brady, this team is his kryptonite. His kryptonite has always been, and I guess you could say that about all quarterbacks. But as we saw with Brock, if you can move, you can kind of do some things if the pressure is coming straight up the middle. But that's always been his kryptonite, is pressure in his face. And with his center guard situation, that's their Achilles heel. So of course he's gonna, again, he didn't give up any sacks, and it's because he's savvy enough to know how to get rid of the ball and not take unwanted hits. So again, I'm not really trying to be in the 47-year-old quarterback business just on GP, even if he is the greatest of all time. But yeah. Quick thing though, I'm kind of a weirdo when it comes to this kind of thing. But so just bear with me. Do you think, can you imagine Tom Brady, Tom Brady, the great Tom Brady, at his folks' house in San Mateo this evening? That's kind of that's the kind of thing that I think that would be hella cool. Him driving over the bridge and hanging out in San Mateo with his parents. I don't know if that is how he gets down, but I think it would be cool if it is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So remember how I told you the story last week that my buddy played Babe Ruth League with Tom, and I guess my buddy knows Tom has a couple sisters, and my buddy had mentioned like, oh yeah, I'm like Facebook friends with them or whatever. But when you become that famous, right? Like your hangout crew is way different, and especially when his wife was so famous as well, like he probably doesn't have that normal family life that we would have had.
Right, exactly.
But even Michael Jackson made sure that those Jackson's albums were out there, so his brothers kept getting paid. So hopefully he's got, and plus he's got young kids, so hopefully the grandparents get to see the kids and stuff. Because doesn't Tom have like a kid who's like a high school quarterback or something?
So yeah. So to me, it's like way cooler to imagine Tom and Jadell hanging out at his parents' house than it is his parents hanging out in their mansion. I don't know. That's just me and my
totally. Okay. 49ers and Seahawks on Thursday night. 49ers are on a roll, and this should be a game that they win, but the Thursday night game can be a little tricky because a lot of times it is related to health, right? It's related to what teams are best fit to play on that day. So for the Seahawks, Geno didn't have his best game, threw a couple picks. They didn't have their running back, Kenneth Walker, so they relied on Travis Homer for 9 for 26. That he was the leading rusher. Who's the number one receiver today for them? Is a good old former 49er, Marquise Goodwin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he went 5 for 95 today.
Okay.
And so I think all things sort of point to the Niners. They historically have not played terrifically in that building, but I don't think that building is the same building anymore. When the team isn't great.
Those were different teams too.
Yeah. And so like I think the 49ers win, but I also think that this is going to be a much closer game than today's was, just because of the, you sort of even out things when you play in 5 days versus, giving Kyle a lot more time to game plan and to make sure who's able to play and stuff. I think the shortening of Thursday night kind of is a little bit of an equalizer at times. So I'm expecting a much closer game than maybe some 49er fans are.
Absolutely. And like you say, they are both on a short week, but they don't, Seattle doesn't have to travel. So that's a bit of an advantage. And it's, there's not much practice time. Everybody's a little banged up. So, and then, just game planning wise, it's a stripped down version. But I believe talent wise, we should be able to just line up and beat these dudes. But it may be that you're right, that it's a lot closer than some folks might think. So
though, also the way the 49ers play, though, if the game goes to their style, it is to beat up these teams late and really control the ball. And if they can do that, because Seattle's defense is not good, right?
Not at all.
The one thing, and we can go back to this, we talked about in the beginning. If Purdy is hurt, then this game could be like a pick'em game at that point if Purdy can't play. So that I think that's a big deal.
And then it bears noting that, the one thing that as good as our defense is, we saw it with the Dolphins, and then we saw it, it was called back, but we saw it today. We can get beat over the top, and with Lockett and Metcalf, and Geno, the way he is spinning it, particularly downfield, we need to be, our coverage needs to be tight, and we can't be just letting guys go and running free, because they will capitalize on it. So
Goodwin.
Absolutely,
I'm sure he's not as fast as he used to be, but still, that guy could run.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right, so you good to be back here Thursday night?
Absolutely.
All right,
wouldn't miss it.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun covering this team in the way that we have been covering them. By the way, just as an aside, you were able to watch Warriors Celtics last night?
Absolutely. That is the first game that I've watched from tip to tip, and they look great, man. I was like wondering. I was in like my group chat with my friends, like, what is different tonight than the rest? Because I've just been kind of like peeking in on them and hearing and seeing that it hasn't been a great go, but they looked awesome last night.
Yeah, so I think Brian and I are trying to figure out when we're going to be back, because usually we record Thursday, but that'll be 49er time. So we may try and do it tomorrow night after the Bucks game, but we'll figure it out. But on the death lineup, the last week, the thing that I mentioned was, I hope that just the Celtics coming into town gives the Warriors energy, because they've been sleepwalking through some of these games. It's almost like, like regular season, like we just want to get to the playoffs, which can be dangerous because, they're barely over 500 now. But my thought was like, I hope that they want to prove that on their floor against this Celtics team, which is the dandy of the NBA right now, that no, championship still runs through San Francisco. So that was what I hoped, and that was exactly what it was. Like, Steph and Clay wanted to kill those guys last night, and it was fun to watch. All right, thanks for hanging out with Rod and I here, and we'll be back Thursday night after 49ers Seahawks, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of a better picture of where the playoff scenario is. And I apologies for me screwing up the playoff scenario earlier. I was thinking of the NFL playoffs has changed like almost every 2 or 3 years since we were watching. So
for sure.
But anyway, we got it straight. I understand it now, and we'll move ahead for next week, Thursday night against Seattle, the Amazon game. So thankfully for us, we're in the Bay Area, so we don't have to watch through the Amazon app, because then you don't get to like I don't know if the pausing and the fast forwarding and all that stuff works quite as well as it does with my thing. But anyway, all right, we'll be back. See you Thursday night after Niners Seahawks. For Rod, I'm Double G. Peace out.